Hey guys, welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I have a little bit of a lost voice. Hopefully, it's not too bad. Thankfully, it's much better than yesterday. Last night, when on my ride home from the game, I definitely could not speak very much. But I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to be joined as always by my guys Tyler and Alex. Tyler, we'll start with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. My voice was definitely gone yesterday and this morning. I'm just getting it back, but I'll make it through this. I'll push forward.
After yesterday, I have to say, I don't understand how people drink alcohol at games because my head was pounding for the entire second half, and I was just like chugging waters, trying to stay hydrated and trying to make sure that I could continue yelling my face off. And I did, had a great time, but definitely was a fun experience overall. Alex is here as well, joining us from a foreign country. Alex, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. So what happened when Tyler and Steven were at the game is they gave the monkey the machine gun known as Twitter, and that proved destructive effects. So we won't talk about that.
No, it's all good, man. We all have takes, and hopefully no one disagreed too strongly, because I think at the end of the day, it's all, heat of the moment, and we just, got to move on. So we are going to move on today. I do want to start out by just kind of talking about the environment of yesterday's game in the stadium. And really, I had been to some other NFL stadiums before. I had been to the Coliseum in Oakland. I've been to, the Coliseum in LA. I've been to, a bunch of stadiums in my life. I've been to Levi's Stadium, been to the Broncos Stadium, but SoFi Stadium truly is like next level game watching experience. And if you're on the fence of going to a game this year, I highly recommend anyone who is thinking about it to just go, and you'll have a blast. The game is awesome. There are definitely some things they need to work out, like parking and things like that. But overall, the game experience at SoFi Stadium is just so good. The production of the game is awesome. I loved when they did the introduction as the team was running out. They started playing Thunderstruck, and just it was such a cool environment to see. And I think Tyler kind of feels the same way as well.
Yeah, this is my third time being at that stadium now for something sort of live, but the atmosphere this time I just think was more electric. And granted, things count this game, but there was something different. And when Linval Joseph, they show him walking out, and Thunderstruck goes on. I'm like, hell yeah, we're gonna win. We lost, but still at the beginning of the game, I was pumped because it's like, heck yeah. I don't know why they had the camera on Linval, but there's something right about it. And when Justin Herbert came out, I was cheering. And the atmosphere was so strong. I genuinely got emotional. I've been to Qualcomm. I've been to StubHub. I've been to the whatever the hell the Raiders call that thing in Northern California. And for whatever reason, I got emotional for the intros. And I don't know why, but there was just something about the enormity of everything, the atmosphere. And I think part of it too was also, and we can talk about, debating fan attendance. But to me, even though I do feel like the Dallas Cowboys fans did outnumber the Chargers fans, there were enough Chargers fans there to fill up StubHub just with Chargers fans, no problem. There was so many more fans there than I ever expected there to be, especially with the Dallas Cowboys showing up. So it was just so electric, and I had such a great time, except for the final score.
Yeah, and Alex can certainly talk about what the game looked like on TV, but being there in person, it felt pretty close to 50-50. I definitely give the edge towards the Cowboys fans, but it being against the Cowboys, that's a massive win in my opinion for this team. The fact that there were so many Chargers fans there was so much fun to watch. It was great to hear everybody. The Cowboys fans definitely had their fun with the Amari Cooper chants and the "Let's Go Cowboys" chants. But I feel like we had some really good moments too. When there was that delay of game right after, right before the Cowboys punted, it was like a truly electric moment, and everybody around us was having a great time, high-fiving each other. So I feel like we showed out, man. I really do. I feel like, the Chargers fans that went were loud, they were rowdy, and I thought it being 50-50, at least in game in the stadium, I think that's a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, even if we're talking about it being 60-40 or 55-45, whatever it was, that's much better than I thought they would do. I mean, I jokingly said on the show a couple times, I expected it to be 50,000 to 20,000. And I think if we were at StubHub, that would have been the kind of ratio that we saw really in that stadium, because it's so out of the blue, and you also get priced out of tickets faster in that stadium based on the limited seating. So like I think that in that stadium there probably would have been more Cowboys fans by a significant margin. I thought watching on TV it was 60% Cowboys fans, but either way, I think that's a massive win, especially when you consider that like the opponents that will eventually come up, that you're not playing the Cowboys every week, right? Like you do have to deal with the Raiders and the Steelers that will come up, and those will kind of be like the Cowboys in a sense. But you also get a chance to play the Giants down the road, and you also get a chance to play the Vikings, right? So like I think the Chargers can do better with those games and probably win a majority of the stadium, right? So it'll also be based on, whether the team is winning at the time or not, and whether people want to sell those tickets. I mean, that's just the market and, how natural it is. But it's a great victory in that sense, although they lost the game.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll say, like, I talked to a bunch of Chargers fans that said that, they were kind of like on the fence of like, the Chargers being LA or the Rams being LA, and they've kind of stayed on the fence recently. But Justin Herbert and this team and Brandon Staley has brought a lot of new fans into the stadium, and I think that's great. Like we've got to continue to grow this team and continue to watch Justin Herbert improve and Brandon Staley improve. And once this team starts winning to the scale that we think they will down the road, I think it's going to be a much better environment. And that's really what it is. It comes down to from a fan turnout standpoint. We just need to keep seeing improvement, and I think we will. So before we get started on the game takeaways, I do want to mention one of our sponsors, which is TickPick. TickPick is the original no-fee ticket site and the only one you'll ever need as your go-to for all NFL tickets. I saw a couple of people mention that they had been using them recently, and if you use the code GUILTY at checkout, you'll save $10 on your first order, regardless of tickets or location, whether you're going to the game this weekend in Kansas City or a game in SoFi Stadium. Use the code GUILTY for checkout, and you'll save $10 on your first order. All right, that being said, let's jump into this recap, if you will, and talk about just some kind of our general takeaways of the Chargers' loss to the Cowboys. Alex, we'll start with you. What's your kind of big takeaway from this game?
Just not nearly as efficient as week one in terms of what we saw on both sides of the ball. And my main takeaway is just shot themselves in the foot too many times, right? Like even on the touchdown that they scored early in that game, like they commit, what was it, like 5 penalties on that drive and keep continuously backing themselves up. Or, like on the drive before half, like it's like, okay, well, we're getting momentum. And then, Tristan Vizcaino misses the field goal. Which was an unfortunate way to kind of go into the half. Or you have something like, okay, the Cowboys are about to punt. Chargers are going to start on their own 25. And KJ Hill says, no, we're starting on the 8-yard line. So I think there were just so many of those kind of moments throughout the game where the Chargers had the chance to seize momentum or sort of like take the game. I thought the Cowboys were pretty sloppy in a lot of respects, either outside of their run game, although I did think their defense did play better than I thought they would. So, I think there's a lot of things you can say that, hey, the Chargers could have done this. I'm sure people will have questions about the refs later, so we're not going to talk about it. But, it just wasn't nearly as efficient in terms of what we saw from the Chargers last week against Washington. And that was really the big disappointment to me.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme of the last 2 weeks, at least in terms of the red zone offense in particular. In this game, you had Keenan Allen slip, like you had the penalties, which have been an issue in both games. So I don't take too much away from Justin Herbert in this game. Of course, you saw some people talking about regression and things like that, but I think where a Jalen Guyton drop and a Keenan Allen not falling down away from him having like 2 amazing games, and it just is kind of a rough, really kind of turn of events. I don't necessarily think this is a pattern of them struggling or things like that. But my general takeaway is that the red zone offense has to be better going forward, and I think it will, because Tyler kind of pointed this out to me earlier. The Chargers have been in the red zone 10 times, and they've only scored 3 touchdowns. And Washington's not a great team, but they're a return playoff team. Like, they're solid. And I think everybody kind of expects Dallas to be in that same kind of tier too. So when you're playing these good teams, Like, you have to execute in the red zone. And like I said, it was just kind of some, unfortunate events at certain points. But, you're playing the Chiefs this week and the Raiders look better this year. Of course, we'll see. They're always frauds until proven otherwise. But then you have the Browns and then you have the Ravens. The schedule right now is about to be much more difficult than it has been the past 2 weeks. So if you're going to beat the Chiefs, if you're going to beat the Browns, if you're going to beat the Ravens, you can't be going 30% in the red zone. And that's kind of my big takeaway. Whatever the case may be, whether it's, running the ball more, which is what Brandon Staley kind of mentioned, involving Donald Parham more, something needs to change in the red zone, and it needs to change immediately.
Sorry, let me just block this user for saying that. Okay. Yeah, the red zone thing was disappointing to say the least. Donald Parham has been targeted once. Was targeted once that game, and it went for a touchdown. It wasn't the red zone, but can you get him more involved at some point? I don't understand. I felt like all of training camp definitely training camp, we saw Parham catching touchdowns over and over again in training camp. Here he is. Here's the weapon. And what happened to him? As far as the shooting themselves in the foot part, the Chargers currently have the most yards in penalties and have the third most total penalties. They are top 3 in terms of offensive holding calls. So here's what they're on pace for. So in 2020, they had 85 penalties in 16 games. Currently, they are on pace for 153 penalties this year.
Oh my gosh.
Granted, that is a 17-game schedule, but 153 penalties is what they're on pace for. Now, granted, the refs contributed, and there were some calls that, are a little excessive there. And hopefully moving forward, things will kind of even up. But yes, they are currently on pace to have double the number of penalties, or very, very close to double number of penalties that they had last year, which is not good. My big takeaway is that the run defense is absolutely struggling. And I think it comes down to a number of players, but really 2, in my opinion. Early on, Jerry Tillery, but for most of the game, Kenneth Murray. And I'm a little surprised that right now he's not doing as well as I don't know, that I thought he would be, to be completely honest, because he's at least, yes, it is a different system. And, potentially the injury, there was something there about the injury that hampered him. But I'm just surprised at this point that he's missing everything. So anybody in the chat, I want you to guess. Let me find the number here. Hold on 1 second, because I have to bring up this stat because it kind of blows my mind just a little bit. So average depth of tackle for Kaiser White is 2.8 yards. It's 1.5 for Tranquil. What do you think it is for Murray? What is his average depth of tackle right now? If you guys want to guess, go for it. Alex or Steven, if you want to guess, unless you already know it.
No, you can just tell me the information.
I'll say
8 yards.
8 yards
in the run game. His average depth of tackle right now is 8 yards.
Holy shit!
And that's how bad things are going right now for Kenneth Murray in the run game. I'm pretty sure the average depth of tackle in the passing game might be 8 yards. He's 8 yards in the run game right now, according to Pro Football Focus. I'm pretty sure. Arjun, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure it's 8. Again, 2.8 for White, 1.5 for Tranquil, 8 for Murray. That's how bad it is right now. And so, again, better defensive tackles, better defensive line. You can, that number probably goes down, but still, right now we're at 8 for Murray, and that's not good.
No, I think there's. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show today, and Nate Tice was talking about Zaven Collins for the Cardinals, and the way that he was talking about Zaven Collins made me think of Kenneth Murray, because what he said about Zaven Collins was that he is just a see ball, go get ball, and if that works, it's a great splash play. If it doesn't work, your defense is screwed, and that's what I feel like Kenneth Murray is doing right now. There was that great play in the fourth quarter where he read Ezekiel Elliott's run right off the bat and went and tackled him for a loss, excuse me. And then there was another time where he really tried to knife through the offensive line, and Zeke just simply bounced to the other hole that Kenneth Murray had just vacated and went for 15 yards. So it's frustrating to watch because he's so talented and he's so physical, but he's just really struggling to diagnose plays right now. And I felt like this watching the game. Even Brooke, sitting there next to me was like, why is Kenneth Murray running left while Ezekiel Elliott is running the other way? He's in a bad spot right now mentally more than anything else. And it's like they need him to bounce back because, this defense is not really ever going to reach its height until Kenneth Murray is playing better.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the run defense is definitely specifically the theme, whether you're talking about the lack of Justin Jones, you're talking about Kenneth Murray, Kaiser White was pretty invisible for most of the game, or just kind of outright bad. All of those factors, I think, factor in. For me, it was also, they were also just positioning themselves prior to the snap so far off ball. And I was like, they have Zeke and Pollard. They've been cashing you the whole game. Like, that's what they're going to keep doing unless you stop them, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then maybe that, they'll target you through the air. But like, that was just the thing that kind of infuriated me yesterday. Like, yeah, I mean, I do think the run defense is bad because Linval is a little bit older. We talked about Tillery tons of times. They call up Joe Gaziano instead of Forrest Merrill or Braden Fauco, which, is kind of another issue. And, obviously, I think the Cowboys' offensive line just played a little bit better than what the expectation was for them prior to the game, certainly. So when you allow like 200 yards like that, I think it's a combination of both the run defense scheme. I think they were certainly more prepared prior to the game to defend the pass. And I think it's just a product of who they have. They don't have a run defender when Justin Jones comes off the field that really scares you. Given that Linval Joseph is older and all of these other things. So it's just a tough spot. Now, I do think they get some relief next week because the Chiefs are not coming at you with like a high artillery rushing attack. Obviously, they're going to throw you through the air, and that's where they're going to test you, as we saw against the Ravens last night. But, after you play the Chiefs, you got to go play the Raiders. They have a decent running attack with Josh Jacobs if he's back, obviously, and Kenyon Drake. Then you play, two of the best running attacks in the league in the Browns and the Ravens, right? So that's really the scary thing. And so I really don't know how they're going to fix that, because to me, it's both a scheming issue, which I think can help, but it's also very clearly just a talent and personnel issue at this point. I don't think that they have the right guys to stop the run.
Yeah, I wasn't super worried about the run game. Like, if you had told me a month ago that the Cowboys would rush for 200 yards, I would have been like, what the hell happened? Like, what went wrong? So I wasn't super worried about this game, but I was definitely worried and still am worried against the Browns and the Ravens in back-to-back weeks. Like, those are probably the two best rushing attacks in the league, even still with the Ravens running back issues because of Lamar. But it really is a concern right now. And I know that there is some of Brandon Staley's scheme inviting teams to really kind of run the football and take, what the defense is giving them and be patient and, have these extended drives. But at the same time, like, it's not designed to give up 200 yards rushing. And part of it is
Exactly.
personnel, right? Like, not having Justin Jones puts more stress on Jerry Tillery. It puts more stress on Christian Covington. And I thought Covington played pretty well in the first game. I wanted him to see an expanded role, but he's not a starter. Like, he is a reserve player who needs to be used as such. And Jerry Tillery, like, he got blown up a couple of times in the first half. I'm not denying that fact. One was by Zach Martin. So I will allow that to happen because Zach Martin is arguably the best offensive lineman in the league right now. The other time there was a double team by I forget who the left guard is. Connor Williams in the center, Tyler Beataz. They got him on a double team one time. So that's not great, but it is what it is. And then the Terrence Steele one that Daniel Popper posted was awful. But I think he improved quite a bit in the second half. There were a couple of times where he shed some tackles pretty early on in the play, got in the backfield, and either made the play or forced the running back elsewhere. And Linval Joseph was the same thing. He wasn't great in the first half, but Linval Joseph was very disruptive in the second half. So the defense definitely came out and adjusted. They only gave up 3 points in the second half. So, I mean, credit to them. Like, they did really come out, but it is a concern because if you give up 200 yards rushing to the Browns and the Ravens, you're losing. You're not going to be in those games. You will lose to the Browns and Ravens if you give up this much success against running teams.
I don't know. It's tough for me to gauge how it would turn out if they give up 200 rushing yards a game, but somehow only got 20 points scored against them. But yeah. I mean, the Chiefs, even successful in the red zone and every part of the field, they lost a lot. I think the Chiefs are the team that's the worst against the run right now. That's because they played the Ravens, and even then, with all the offensive firepower they had, they still couldn't put it together. So, the Cowboys aren't really a run first team, so I don't think they could really punch it in. They couldn't really capitalize as much as a team like the Ravens or Browns could. So yeah, it could get ugly. I don't know what they're going to do because Joseph is nose tackle 1, Covington is nose tackle 2. That's the way they want the roster, and they're going to keep 3 defensive tackles otherwise. What do you do to change this? Is Tillery now your situational pass rusher? Do you just get Justin Jones back if things get better? Do you have a 6th player, a defensive lineman added to the team? Because right now they're always 2 nose tackles, 3 defensive tackles, no matter what. How do you change? I don't really know what the answer to this is, because right now it's tough. And sure, bring up Merrill, bring up Fehoko, but again, Joseph is nose tackle 1, Covington is nose tackle 2. I don't know. How do you change that? I don't think you can. It's going to be what it is, and your defensive tackles / defensive ends have to step up.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be better when you have Justin Jones back. It'll also be better when Chris Harris is back, because that'll allow Derwin James to be in the box more. I know some people were like, "Where was Derwin yesterday?" He was in the slot playing against Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and company,
shutting down. Yeah.
Like, this was not about Derwin James. Like, he was great. It was just a different kind of great. So I think it'll be better once Justin Jones comes back. But I think, to your point, like, Jerry Tillery is playing the most of all the defensive tackles right now. And I get it. Like, he's the 1st round pick. Like, he is theoretically, the best pass rusher of the group. But I would like to see them be able to rotate them more situationally. Right now it's just kind of like, keep guys fresh. And I get that. But I think you need to have a specific plan for getting Tillery more pass rushing reps and fewer run defense snaps, and doing the opposite with Christian Covington or Justin Jones, or if they bring a Merrill or whoever, and really keep Tillery fresh as a pass rusher and not give him all this responsibility as a run defender. I think he's improving in that regard. Like, I know people are going to give him a lot of shit and give me a lot of shit for saying that, but I do really feel like he is improving against the run. It's just coming at a slower pace than all of us would like. But he did make some good plays in the second half.
I think at some point. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, Alex.
No, sorry. I would just like to say this comment made me laugh because I actually completely forgot about this moment. It was out of my head. I guess it's coming out of halftime. The play where the touchdown where Zeke almost got it before the half, and he got stopped at like the 2-yard line. Like, that was really just encapsulating the entire game for me, where the Cowboys just, broke some big run or had like that almost play, and just, it was just kind of sloppy throughout. And so when we talk about Zeke and all these things in the run defense, it was just, it was really that vibe the entire game.
Yeah, it was sloppy on both sides for sure. All right, let's shift gears and talk about some positive takeaways, because I think there definitely were some positive things. It definitely was not all bad, even though it was not very pretty. And I'm going to start by saying this, and of course we can talk about the negative effects of this happening, but I truly think the Chargers have something special brewing on the left side of the offensive line with Rashawn Slater and Matt Filer. I thought, Rashawn Slater gave him more pressures, but I thought he was really excellent holding down the left side. And it was a similar effect. Like, they started out the game trying to put Micah Parsons on the left side, and they just realized, like, this isn't going to work. Like, you're not going to get past Rashawn Slater. My guy Bradley and I did get past him like once or twice, which made me feel very conflicted. But I think the relationship that's developing between Rashawn Slater and Matt Filer is really, really solid. You can see them working with each other. You can see them communicating. They're passing off stunts at a very high level. They're making run blocks at a very high level. Matt Filer is the 4th highest graded run blocker in the league, regardless of position, on Pro Football Focus right now. Like, Rashawn, and it showed up on tape. Like, I haven't watched the all 22 right now, but rewatching the broadcast, you really see Matt Filer and Rashawn Slater making an impact on the run game, in the passing game. And that's one of the things that I think they can do in the red zone to bring more efficiency, is just run behind those two, man. And then you add in Corey Linsley too. So we can talk about the right tackle and like the adverse effects of that. But right now, the left side of the Chargers offensive line looks really, really fantastic and really, really strong, and much better than even I would have hoped for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true that you just look at those guys and, they were the one positive thing you could say about the offensive line as
Yeah.
opposed to kind of what the right side was. But Slater's just looked awesome in these 2 games, and I feel like he's been tested and has responded. He has not had the easiest job going
Oh,
against Chase Young,
there
then
we go.
forcing, then allowing Micah Parsons to invade Norton. So that was an issue as well. But yeah, no, I think my biggest positive was the secondary. I thought the secondary back to Adam. I know he dropped the pick in the red zone, which was a problem, but other than that, you really had Derwin being Derwin. I thought that he was just really solid in pass coverage, obviously having to play in the slot due to the loss of Chris Harris. So that was really great. You have Asante Samuel Jr. getting his first interception, which was really cool to see. And Davis locks up Amari Cooper, right? Like that's a huge storyline as well. So if there's one unit that I come away with like a positive take from, it's the secondary, because to me, these Dallas receivers were not going to be easy to stop down a cornerback in Chris Harris, and they just did it. Obviously, it helped that they got gashed in the run game, so therefore, the Cowboys weren't throwing it as much, but still, like, it's not very easy to take CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and those guys out of a game, regardless of what the run game is doing on most nights. So I thought them being able to do that was really good. So to me, especially the Nasir Adderley part of it, it was great to see him have that bounce back game after I was more cautiously optimistic, or, after week 1 and that effort against Washington. I thought he really improved. And the whole secondary was kind of like A- kind of game for me.
Yeah, they did much better than I ever would have expected. And now some of that comes from Dak Prescott throwing in 2.25 seconds, which is faster than Herbert threw last week against the Washington football team. So, it's not like they challenged these guys deep or anything, but I guess I'm assuming there wasn't really much there. For each guy, I believe Cooper and Lamb, if you take away that end of half, catch and run sort of desperation play, I think they had like 74 yards or something like that combined. And again, if you had told me that was the outcome, and they had 70 something yards combined and no touchdowns, I'd assume that the Chargers had blown them out. The secondary, even without Chris Harris Jr., absolutely stepped up and did so much better than I would have expected. But aside from those guys, I guess I got to give it to, I got to give it to Justin Herbert first. And while I don't think he played a perfect game, there were just plays. And maybe, Steven, you can speak on this too. This is the first time I've seen him really live against an NFL team. There's just something about sitting in the end zone view and watching him work, and then how that ball launches out of his arm and down the field, and the plays that he's making. We were sitting on whatever end zone that was, and he threw that 2-yard pass to Keenan Allen. It's like, where is that going? How is that going to? Oh my God, it's a completion. And he right over the defender. It was just perfect. And having that view just makes me appreciate him so much more. It was amazing. Yeah. But I will have to give it up for Mike Williams here. I really, really think that they are not asking him to do anything spectacular or special that he can't do. And that's the point. Like, I was more disappointed that he maybe couldn't do more than that, but they are letting him do and be exactly who he is. And what he is right now is a very, very good possession receiver. Unfortunately, some calls were called back, or some plays were called back, and that was unfortunate. But he just looks like the go-to target and a very solid, almost equal to Keenan Allen. I don't think he's an equal receiver to Keenan Allen, but in terms of a target for Justin Herbert, they're very much a 1A, 1B right now. And it's really, really good to see in a contract year for him that he's playing so well.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, he's on pace for more targets than Keenan Allen right now. Like, it's definitely not something that we would have expected. And of course, it's 2 games, and that can change, right? But we all wanted to see Mike Williams be more versatile and be more involved and be more than just a jump ball guy. And it's been happening, and it's been very successful. I know he had the one drop touchdown, which, I mean, imagine his numbers and touchdowns right now if he hadn't dropped that. But it's so much fun to watch. And everybody talking in the chat about Joe Lombardi, y'all are tripping. Are we really talking about going back to Shane Steichen and company right now? Come on. Joe Lombardi and this offense is not the problem. Like, I don't know how anyone is watching this team put up 400 yards both of the last 2 games and feel like Joe Lombardi is the problem. The execution in the red zone is not Joe Lombardi's fault. Like, this is this is a non-issue for me. Like Joe Lombardi is absolutely not the issue for me. So I understand like we all want this team to score more and we want them to execute better, but Joe Lombardi is not the problem. The offense is humming on all cylinders. They're moving the ball at will against these teams. So if you think Joe Lombardi is the problem, you like, please, like, we're watching a different game because I am not seeing a play caller be the problem at this point.
I will say like a small criticism of Lombardi. Like, I don't really think he's the problem. And I'm not going to say like, oh, Lombardi. I thought he was. I really thought Herbert and Lombardi had a worse plan than they did. But upon rewatching, because I'm watching the freaking thing from the 300 seats in the stadium. So being able to actually watch this game, like I realized that there was more to it than just Lombardi stinks and Herbert stinks. But I will say I was surprised that they kept, maybe not kept, but there were so many instances where the team would end up with like 2nd and 9 because they were running for these modest gains. And it just felt like instead of passing to get ahead and to be ahead, it just sometimes felt like they were taking these runs. There was one run like 2nd and 12 where they decided to run. I didn't like that all that much. And then they kept trying to get those running backs involved, like Eckler in the pre-snap motion, and then jump right to the flat. And I feel like they did it 15 times. And at some point, the Cowboys just kept hitting the guy for a 1-yard loss or a 1-yard gain. It wasn't really working. So I wasn't a super big fan of that. But other than that, like, I thought it was a pretty solid game. Again, they are moving the football, but Keenan Allen slipping twice, ref calls, all sorts of issues. That's not on Lombardi in the end. So player execution, I think, will make things much better.
I wouldn't go as far as to say it's on Lombardi. By no means is he on the hot seat in favor of Shane Steichen or all that. Like, no. But I do think that the Chargers just kind of were able to chug down the field at a pretty good pace. And then obviously we talk about the red zone issues, which were just like, kind of a cross between Herbert decision-making, people not being in the right place at the right time, rather than what the actual play calls were. So to me, that was more the problem in the red zone. I will say, kind of in the middle of the field, I didn't really love all the stuff they were doing with all of like the screens and sort of short stuff they did. Or sure. I felt that they went to that well a little bit too much in this game, particularly, just at the end where like, I think there was one where like maybe it was Justin Jackson and Herbert like kind of nearly threw a pick there. There were just a couple of those where I don't mind those plays getting called because, obviously sometimes you'll throw it to Austin Eckler. Sometimes you'll get it to one of those guys and it'll work and it'll break a big game. We've seen that so many times, but I just felt like they were going to the well so much for that. And, I would have liked to have seen more running plays. I mean, especially when you look at the stats and it's like, well, Eckler did finish with, over 6 yards per carry, right? So he did well in that sense. And I thought Justin Jackson had a couple flashes where I was like, okay, this, he's getting a little bit going in both the passing or the rushing and the receiving game. But they just sort of never really went back to it. Obviously, Eckler got hurt a little bit for a series and then came back into the game. So it was a little bit disjointed. But because it was a close game the whole time, I think that they could have run the ball more. But I think that they'll get the red zone stuff figured out. I'm not too concerned about it at this point. Obviously, if this is a trend that we still see by week 6 and the bye week in week 7, and they're, sort of still at this 18.5 points per game, and, we're seeing top five in yards, like, yeah, I mean, that will be a thing that needs to be talked about at that point. But for me, I just don't see it as kind of a problem yet. And I think people are still learning the offense.
Yeah, we kind of figured that this would be a bit of a struggle to kind of get in a rhythm. And, unfortunately, that's been the case. I think one of the things that I talked about I wanted to see improved from Lombardi this week is a more diverse, rushing attack. And we saw that there was a lot more RPOs this week. There were more outside zone runs. There were more, there was a jet sweep to Jalen Guy. And like, he is improving. And that's all that I really care about at this point in his career. Like, he has shown me enough at this point where I'm comfortable going forward. Is it perfect? No. Like, there's definitely some stuff that needs to be cleaned up, but he's been an offensive coordinator for like 30 games. Like, this is going to improve. So I get like, it's frustrating to not have these deep bombs and not watch Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson run 75 yards into the end zone. But Justin Herbert had 10 attempts that traveled more than 20 yards. 3 of them got called back for penalties, but he had 10 attempts that went for more than 20 yards in the air. So they're throwing it down the field like they promised. They're just not getting the deep touchdowns. I think they will come, but everybody talking about like, we miss Tyron Johnson. Like, did we not watch Justin Herbert throw a fucking laser beam for 45 yards in the air to Keenan Allen? So I'm not worried about the play calling. I'm not worried about the design of the offense. I'm worried about the execution. I'm worried about the red zone interceptions. I'm worried about the red zone penalties. And that's not on the offensive coordinator.
I do miss Tyron Johnson, but that's only because they kept KJ Hill for special teams value, and that's looking like
absolutely,
a garbage
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Ready to see this French guy and see what he's about. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here, which we can talk about. Obviously, we have to talk about Storm Norton today, because
who's we? Come on, Steven.
Okay. The first PFF thing came out, and according to Arjun, he had given up 11 pressures, which is absurd. And then for whatever reason, it went from 11 to 10 to 9. It was bad. It really was bad. Yeah. And, you know, I was giving Micah Parsons and the Cowboys a lot of shit because I didn't really think that was a smart move. Apparently, Micah Parsons is the second coming of Lawrence Taylor. For all I know, this is like the next Jesus at the defensive end position. But to me, it just felt like Storm Norton had a bad plan of attack. And it felt like he was really, really worried about Micah Parsons kind of burning him past the edge and running around him. He was really oversetting and really kind of just allayed him to the inside rush quite often. And then really the only criticism of Lombardi that I have yesterday is that they were not helping Storm Norton with chips at all. You know, last week against Washington, we saw Steve Anderson chip Chase Young or Montez Sweat a couple times. We saw Gabe Neighbors do it. They left Storm Norton on an island all game long. So if you're going to criticize Joe Lombardi, that's where you can criticize Joe Lombardi, in my opinion, and have it be a fair criticism. But still, Storm Norton needs to play better. I guess my question to you guys, and Tyler, we'll start with you first, is how worried are you, and when are you potentially making a change?
Okay. Based on that game alone, I'm very worried and terrified. I don't know why he wasn't given as much help. Granted, you know, I don't know much about offensive line and how to help, but you described back in the Washington football team preview episode how to help Rashawn Slater. So why that wasn't done for Storm Norton, I don't quite understand. I don't know if on tape, for whatever reason in college, Parsons was just a run faster on the outside kind of guy. And so they're like, okay, he's probably going to beat you outside. And then that's why I don't know. Like, I'm trying to explain away almost, 9 pressures or whatever it is. But I do think that Storm Norton eventually falls in between his performance against the Washington football team and his performance against the Cowboys. I don't think he's going to give up 9 pressures every week. I don't think he's going to give up only 1 pressure every week. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And at the end of the day, this all really does fall on Brian Bulaga. We do feel, I think at least all 3 of us feel, that Brian Bulaga, when healthy, is much better than Storm Norton. That's just the way it is. So I think, Bulaga, he's got 2 more games to be out. He's probably going to come back at the buys, and they just have to hold on. So give Norton some help when Bulaga comes back. If you want to put Bulaga on the island, I would understand that. But for now, just give him help. And I'm not super worried with Bulaga coming back, but it is time to draft a new right tackle.
Yeah, I think the Storm Norton thing for me really came down to, like, this is who Storm Norton is. Like, I mean, we saw this last year where it was like, and this just goes to how bad the Chargers offensive line was last year. It was like, oh, Storm Norton is actually the highest Chargers PFF rated offensive lineman. It's like, yeah, it's because he's a 65 on the website and all the other guys suck. Like, that was the whole thing with it last year, right? So, like, Storm Norton to me is like, I mean, very much a Sam Tevy type where it's like, yeah, he'll have good games where he's serviceable, and he'll also have bad games where he's not serviceable at all. And some games where he's in the middle, like Tyler said. Like, that's just the difference between having him and Brian Bulaga. And so I felt like the Washington, hype train when it came to Storm Norton, because he, did get that one play with Chase Young and did a generally good job in the second half. There's just going to be a lot of variance in his performances throughout the year. Now, I think you can still stick it out. I saw a lot of people demanding that we immediately move Filer to right tackle. I don't quite agree with that. I think you allow Norton to play next week at right tackle, and then see what it's going to be like, right? Obviously, if he gets bullied by Chris Jones and those guys next week, and we're having this conversation again, then I think going into the Raiders game, then you probably have to consider obviously Max Crosby and some of the other stuff on that. Then maybe you consider Filer going there, right? But for me at this point, this was always who Norton was. He is a very high level XFL tackle. And that means that you are a middling NFL tackle, right? Yeah. So to me, that's what it is at the end of the day. Obviously, we can hope for the best for him. And like Steven and Tyler have insinuated, I think there are ways you can help Storm Norton that will balance him out. But this is what he's going to be for the whole year. So this is just kind of a hold on phase, and hope Brian Bulaga is actually able to come back down the road.
Yeah, it's just all about mitigating the risk, which they were able to do in the first game. I don't, maybe they just kind of expected, or maybe they were not expecting Micah Parsons to play on the edge as much as he did, or I don't really know what the kind of coaching was going on there, but you have to be able to mitigate the risk at least somewhat. You're not going to be able to chip or slide protection his way on every single pass play. Like, you're just not. NFL teams are too good across the board. And so, like, you're going to have to figure out a way to make things easier for him. And, Micah Parsons is really fast. Like, he's a very fast individual. So that gives a larger individual problems at times. And it just, unfortunately, felt like it just really steamrolled for Storm against Micah Parsons and specifically. So they'll have to figure it out. As for like moving Filer there, like I said earlier, I personally am not interested in moving Filer over to right tackle anymore. I thought that was potentially something they could do earlier in the season, like if they had more preparations to. Maybe they do after the bye week. Like if Brian Bulaga is still not healthy, then maybe you can put Matt Filer over there after the bye week. But right now, I'm really interested in kind of focusing in on Rashawn Slater and building up his confidence and building up his repertoire. And it's much easier for the left tackle to play next to Matt Filer over Brendan Hymas. I'm always nervous about having two rookies next to each other on the same side, even if I really, really, really like those two rookies. So it's going to make things easier for Rashawn Slater if Matt Filer is always next to him. So to me, moving him to right tackle at this point is like break class in case of emergency. Like, Norton gets hurt, Michael Schofield gets hurt, and then you move him over there. So I'm not super worried about that. The left side, it's just the right side. Like Storm, like you guys said, he's going to have some bad games. He's going to have some good ones. Unfortunately, this one just really snowballed against him.
I think at some point Brendan Hymas could absolutely play well, but I always go back to, there were a lot of people who wanted, the sort of preseason standout Roderick Teamer to start. It's like, come on, get him in there. And with all the injuries during that season, he finally got to play. He played the Texans, and I believe, Steven, you were at that game, and he got absolutely killed by some no-name Texans players. It was really bad. So as much as I think Hymas could eventually be good, I have to sort of trust their personnel decisions at this point. And if they don't think that that's the best option, it's because they kind of know Hymas just isn't there yet. And maybe he could be good. I don't know. But like you said, don't break up that left side. Again, in the end zone view that we had, you could watch on whether outside zone or whatever they ended up doing, or screens. Also, you see Slater and Filer out there on the left side, lead blocking for Eckler. It's beautiful. Like, you don't want to take that away. And especially the next game where, again, you're playing the Chiefs, who have given up the most yards, rushing yards in the NFL, and the highest yards per. I think they give up 6 yards per carry right now. The Chiefs do. So if your goal is to kind of attack with the run game next week, I would keep it as is.
Yeah, I heard a fun stat today on the Athletic Football Show. The Chiefs defense is 32nd in the league in points per play and EPA and like literally every advanced metric. The Chiefs defense is bad. It's in a very bad spot right now. So I feel like that's something that we can exploit. All right, guys, any final general takeaways before we get into studs and duds and then some questions?
Nope.
Okay. So as I said, we are going to talk about studs and duds right now. After we talk about studs and duds, we'll take some questions and just have a good chat for about 15-20 minutes. So let's get started with some duds first, and then we'll wrap it up with a positive studs. So Tyler, who is your first dud of the day?
We've sort of already talked about it. If I get two duds, then I got to start with the one that I talked about, and that's Kenneth Murray. Again, average depth of tackle in the run game is an 8. Maybe it's the new scheme, maybe it's the injury, but right now he is not really doing anything outside of that one play on, I think, their final drive. Wasn't really doing anything to help. He just looks confused. He looks flat-footed. He looks slow, which is a surprise for someone who's supposedly so athletic and has no, lower body injuries that are, super serious outside of, he has the shoulder injury, but nothing lower body from last year that would also turn him into a slow player this year. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. Last year, it did take him some time. Like, we built towards that Patriots game. So I think Kenneth Murray could build towards something, but in this game, he was not very good, and it was surprisingly bad.
Yeah, I think building off that on the defense, I think Joey Bosa has to be my dud for this game. I don't think by any means that because a lot of people are like, Joey Bosa's actually never been good if you think about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay, Joey Bosa's an elite edge player.
That was a fun conversation today.
Yeah. I just felt like this
Very
was a
ironic
game
also.
when nice shirt.
Thank you.
I just felt like this was a game where Joey Bosa had to have an impact. Like, you're going against Terrence Steele, and this Dallas offensive line was not in shambles, but was sort of in, turmoil from the La'el Collins situation. I just felt it was up to Joey Bosa specifically to take advantage of that. Obviously, you had to have Jerry Tillery step up, and you had to have other guys step up, but him putting up the game that he had, where he just kind of got clamped by Terrence Steele the whole game. Obviously, there are going to be situations where he's double teamed, but I think you needed a better performance from him if the Chargers were going to get significant kind of pass pressure and all that stuff. Obviously, Dallas helped out Dak by getting the ball out quickly, just in general. But I felt like Kyler Fackrell was a little bit more active than him. Obviously, he gets that play sort of towards the end of the game, and so. I think you just needed more from Joey Bosa in this game. And so I thought the effort there was a little bit disappointing. Are we doing two duds? Or are we doing one dud? What's the final count on that?
Last week we just did the one. So if you want to give a second one, you can go right ahead.
Ooh, I'm going to go with another big contract Chargers player. I'm going to go with Keenan Allen. I didn't like what he did in this game against Trevon Diggs consistently. And if you just look at the ESPN box score, it'll be like, oh, he had 4 catches for 108 yards. And that's true. But, 60 of those yards or so came on that one big Herbert throw where he just laser beamed that thing over there. And so for the rest of the game, Keenan Allen really had about 3 receptions for 40 yards. And so I think that he just needed a little bit more consistency. Obviously, Mike Williams kind of stepped up to the plate, but in a game where, you probably had 6, 7, maybe combined receptions between Austin Eckler and Jalen Guyton and, a lot of those guys. Austin Eckler had 6 receptions himself, but the supplementary receivers in terms of Guyton and Palmer and those guys, they're going to have those kind of minimal contributions. So I think Keenan Allen was a guy who needed to step up in this one and sort of didn't. And I was surprised by just how he wasn't getting dominated, but he was just he never really beat a guy on a route that I felt comfortable with. And given the state of this Dallas defense, I thought he was just a little bit off today. Yesterday.
I'm going to hardcore disagree with your duds there. Okay, not that I don't see that there's disappointment. Like, you want your stars to be more of a superstar. But again, if we can give credit for the Chargers for having an outstanding game plan against the Washington football team to not let Herbert get hit and throw it so fast, I think we have to also acknowledge that Joey Bosa had, was facing probably 2 guys quite a bit. And also they were just getting the ball out. And they even showed on one play on the Tony Pollard run on like the sweep or whatever. You took advantage of him coming downhill to try to rush the passer, and they just ran right around him. I think they game planned really well around him. They game planned to stop him. They were quick in their passes. So I just think there was almost no way he would have had a great game. Now, again, what have I liked to have been better? Absolutely. Would you like to see him beat double teams and impact the game more? Sure. And then Keenan Allen, the other thing is, I just think, okay, so you think of the red zone interception that Herbert threw, where you want to call it tripped, you want to call it slipped, whatever. Like that would have been a touchdown. He was, I think, open enough for that to have been a touchdown. And then on the stupid sack call, I thought Keenan Allen was open and potentially would have had a touchdown on that play. And so there's another touchdown, but he fell on that one too. And again, that is problematic. You don't want that to happen. And of course, that leads to, the end result being what it was. But like, I think he was open on 2 plays where he could have had 30 yards and 2 touchdowns. And his total could have been, again, almost doesn't count, all this, hypothetical stuff doesn't count. But like, I think he was open. He would have had 2 touchdowns if not for some really unfortunate luck. So while what to him to do better, and Staley did say that he kind of rounded a route that Diggs picked off. He could have ran it more flat to help out Herbert. I think he was better than the box score. Like I think of it the opposite way that you do, I guess. Like I think he was better than the box score in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between there. I think Alex's point isn't that they like had bad games. I think that they were. I think it's that. I mean, I don't want to put words in Alex's mouth, but I think it's relative to the scale of them being arguably, the second and third best players on the team. So Dallas was definitely game planning for Joey Bosa. Like they did to Joey Bosa what we did to Chase Young. Like it was double teams, it was chips, it was run the opposite way, it was like you mentioned the jet sweep. So I understand what Alex is saying, and I also understand what Tyler is saying. So I guess I'm kind of in the middle here, but we're just so accustomed to Joey Bosa being great, and we just didn't get to see. I will say one of his best plays of the day was a pass interference call on Kaiser White on that 4th down. Remember when Kaiser White ran into Amari Cooper? Joey Bosa put a hell of a put Terrence Steele in a blender and got a hit on Dak Prescott, but didn't count because of freaking penalties. So go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, no, I would just like to say that, like, in terms of the Keenan Allen thing first, for me, it wasn't so much that, like, I looked at his final stat total and thought this was bad, because I said, he did have 100 yards, and it's like, okay, that's a Keenan Allen kind of game. But it's just that he wasn't as consistently present throughout, right? Like, the Keenan Allen that we expect, right? Like, they do sort of overemphasize Keenan Allen in this offense a little bit, where it's just like maybe sometimes they're targeting him too much. But still, it felt like in this game, they obviously tried going to him when he wasn't quite open. But still, like, they just couldn't really get that consistent thing throughout the game that they had maybe in Washington, right? Not every game is going to be an overall dominant Keenan Allen game. He's not going to get 100 yards every game and 10 receptions, all right? Like, that's just not going to happen. But I just wanted him to be a little bit more present throughout. And then I think that would have opened up opportunities for wide receivers that weren't Mike Williams.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at the GoFundMe comment. That's actually hilarious. I will say about Keenan Allen, like watching the broadcast or watching the game live, I couldn't really tell what happened on the taunting penalty. I was just kind of confused, like what was going on. But watching the broadcast today, I was pretty frustrated with Keenan. Like Keenan was motioning to his head, and like it felt like he thought that whoever hit him had a dirty hit on him. And I understand like being heated in the moment and like feeling you got a dirty hit on you, but Keenan needs to know better than that. And that really set them back. That was on that same drive, I think, that Herbert threw the interception, if I'm not mistaken, in the red zone. I would have to go back and watch to be certain, but I would have to agree. And then as the Cowboy fan in here points out, Trevon Diggs is really good. Like his interception on Justin Herbert was a really high level play. It wasn't a great throw by Justin Herbert, and it wasn't great execution by Keenan, but it was a very high level play by Trevon Diggs. So that's what we have. That's what I'll say there. My dud, like it was hard for me to pinpoint one specific dud, but I'm gonna go with Justin Jackson. And I know he didn't really play all that much, but watching him live, I was like, oh, he's doing some good things. But watching him on the broadcast, it doesn't feel like he trusts himself right now. it felt like watching him live that he was kind of shying away from contact in the hole or at the point of attack. And I just I'm ready for Larry Roundtree season, man. Like I thought we were getting it last week after Larry Roundtree had like 6 or 7 carries and played good. And then it was the Justin Jackson week today. And maybe they felt like he was the hotter hand, but I just don't feel like Justin Jackson trusts himself right now. And there was even that one play where he got tackled like after a gain of a yard where his feet like completely stopped in the hole. And he ended up getting tackled by, I think, Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's you never want to see that happen for a running back. That's how you get hurt. That's how you get other teammates hurt. So I'm like cooling on Justin Jackson right now. And I'm not saying that anybody said that he's having a great game, but I want to see more Larry Roundtree. I want to see this element of physicality that he brings to this offense. And I don't know, like I'm just kind of worried about Justin Jackson's lack of confidence right now.
I was definitely surprised that they moved away from Larry Roundtree. That was, I don't know why. Like, I mean, I guess game script, sure, but then I don't know. Very, very confusing for sure. That one play that you mentioned, I forgot about that. Watching that live, I shouldn't excuse him on it, but I kind of get it. Like if I were running towards that point, I don't remember what the play was exactly, but I remember thinking to myself, watching it live and on the replay, there was kind of like a no-win. Like I could see him having the hesitation because he thought something was going to be there, and then it wasn't, so he froze. And so I can't really give him a pass for that, but I see the thought process of him going, oh, and by the time he, I tried to make a decision, it was over. But Larry Roundtree not getting involved was strange. But other than that, I actually thought Jackson played well. I thought he looked good. Now he only had 5 touches, but 5.3 yards per carry and 1 catch for 8 yards. Like I don't know how much better he could have done at that point. Could he be more explosive? Could Larry Roundtree have gotten 6.3 yards per carry? Maybe, absolutely. But I do think Jackson, in the 4 attempts that he had, one was just like a weird, I don't know, like a brain freeze. But I thought he looked good, in my opinion. I was actually kind of wanted to see. He came in more, I think, in the second half, and I thought, wow, there's some juice again to the offense. So I actually thought he played well, considering.
Yeah, I can see that. And he did have one really good run. I think his first run was the best of the day. I have to chuckle right now at the Cowboys fan in here saying that Kenneth Murray is cold after we all kind of shit on him today, which is really funny. But all right, let's shift to studs here. I'm going to kick this one off, and I'm going with Asante Samuel Jr. I called my shot, said that he was going to get an interception, and he did. So shout out to Asante for making me look smart. But I thought he played really, really well.
2 on that.
I know and Linval Joseph played better than I thought he would too. So shout out to Linval. But Asante played great, man. Like I know that he, there's not going to be like a great like reception percentage next to his name today, or from yesterday. But I thought he had a couple really, really good tackles. He had the interception, which was such a smart diagnosis of what was happening. And then he had that one pass breakup on 4th down. That was just like really high level stuff on Amari Cooper, like truly, top tier corner stuff. So I'm so excited about Asante Samuel Jr. And we've been talking about this rookie class for months. And it really seems like the Chargers have hit it out of the park with Slater and Samuel. I thought Samuel was fantastic yesterday. Brandon Staley said that they didn't want to move him into the slot after last week. So he's purely an outside corner at this point. And as Edski points out in the chat, he is a gamer. I love what I saw from Asante Samuel Jr. yesterday.
Yeah, I guess for my stud, I will stay in the secondary, and I will go with fellow Philadelphia native Nasir Adderley.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you brought this one up.
I thought he needed a bounce back week after last week. I gave him a lot of shit on the podcast, but relative to his 2019 draft classmate Jerry Tillery, I thought he had a great game. And so I thought that Nas really did a good job. Obviously, a lot of people will talk about the not catching the ball in the end zone, but like, look, he saved 4 points off the board by forcing the Cowboys to go for a field goal there, right? Like, so it would have changed if he holds on to that pick, but that's still a pass deflection that was really quality. Led the team in tackles outright. With a bad shoulder injury, that's just kind of something that doesn't happen. So I just thought he was a baller today. or I keep saying today, yesterday.
I know. we only did the one live recap, and we're already used to the schedule.
Yeah. So no, I just thought Nasir Adderley played really well. I thought this was a bounce back game for him, and in terms of going forward, like I sort of have confidence in him next week. Like when we talk about like all the guys that will need to be covered on the Chiefs and need to be taken care of. Obviously, like the Chiefs are going to burn the Chargers on a bunch of plays, but like I feel more confident with Asante and Derwin, Chris Harris coming back, and Michael Davis and all those guys, more so than I felt coming into this week. And I think that's because of what both Asante and Adderley showed us.
Yeah, before Tyler jumps in here, he had a couple tackles on CeeDee Lamb in space that were some really, really good stuff. And then the thing that I really liked was that almost interception that Alex was just talking about, that people are talking about in the chat. It was the same route concept that Logan Thomas did in week 1. And this time, Nasir Adderley actually undercut it, and he played the ball really well. So I would have loved to see him come down with the interception, of course, but he made that adjustment. He learned from his mistake. And to me, that shows the mental capacity of a player like that. And so I'm really glad that you brought Nasir Adderley up. If Asante hadn't played so well, he would have been my stud. So good one, Alex, there. Skeptical fan, thank you so much.
Cowboys fan.
Oh, is that a Cowboys fan? Wow.
I think a Cowboys fan.
Very generous. Awesome. Shout out to the Cowboys fan in the chat here. Okay, Tyler, let's wrap this conversation up with your stud of the day.
Got to go with Derwin James. They completely changed how they used him. Last week it was, 12 box safety snaps, 20 free safety snaps, and 19 in the slot. This game it was 45 snaps in the slot, and he went from giving up 9 yards last week, doing all of that, to only 23 yards this week playing in the slot. Like there were, again, sorry that the Dallas Cowboys fan who gave us money just now. I appreciate you. YouTube Cowboys fans are better, I guess. But the Twitter Cowboys fans, Derwin James is a safety. He's not a corner. He can't cover. I'm like, okay, you're about to find out that he can cover. Unfortunately, he didn't have any, past. Thank you, Jay.
Let's go, Jay.
Question there. But Derwin James was amazing, and had such a tough assignment. There was also a play where he came on a blitz. It almost like changed the game for them. He blew up the left guard to free up Jerry Tillery. I think he ran through the running back as well and just absolutely annihilated that play to have them combine Derwin James and Jerry Tillery for the sack there. I mean, for him to be that good in coverage, and then when they needed him in the game, for him to just blow up everything that was going on in front of him and help get that sack, it was a big deal. And right now, I believe, again, I'm not a huge Pro Football Focus guy, but he is the number 1 graded safety of, in the NFL right now. And again, not a bit in their grades, but I really think he's playing like that too. So happy to see him back. He's amazing.
He really is. He was awesome. And, it was just so good to see him out there and show what he had. And as Cowboys fans in the chat, I'm really sorry, but we heard all week long that the Chargers secondary was not going to hold up, and we were worried about it. Like, I'm not going to lie, but the way that this group played as a whole, all three of us picked our studs from the secondary, really kind of shows, what that group is about. All right. So we are going to open up this conversation for questions. We'll take questions for about 5-10 minutes. We'll shout out some stuff in the chat. If you want to make sure that your question gets answered, please use the super chat feature as Jay Blue did. Other than that, we'll just kind of scroll through and shout out anything that stood out to us. So let me just.
You can even bring up the refs.
Yeah, this is where
now is your time.
Yeah, I told Alex and Tyler beforehand that I did not want to talk about the refs too much tonight until we got to the questions part. So if you want to talk about the refs and ask about the refs, then now is the time, I guess.
Someone asking about Derwin missing open field tackles concerning. I mean, he's missed 1 so far, so I'm not super concerned. And it's Derwin James. He also had a really good, I think 4-yard loss or whatever tackle. He's gonna be fine. He'll be fine.
It was a hell of a juke by Cedric Wilson, man. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, that shit was nasty. Richie Rocha says, still don't get why you guys is better to score less than 20 points with Lombardi than 35 with Shaitan. I think you mean Steichen.
Steichen.
It doesn't make sense. Get rid of the Shanahan offense. Listen, like the Shanahan offense is the best system in the league right now. Every best offense in the league is being run by a Shanahan guy. So I don't understand why people hate on the system that works so much in the NFL. Like I said, I'm not too worried about the points. I think it's going to come in bunches. The offense is like 5th in the league in yards right now. So I think that's going to even out over time. And I think this unit is going to become more explosive. Shane Steichen, like I think in a better situation, maybe he could be a better offensive coordinator. But no, like do not want any part of Shane Steichen back on this team right now.
So I will actually commentate to that now that Shane Steichen is the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. They scored 11 points this week. It wasn't great. Now, I do think Shane Steichen did very well the week before against Atlanta in terms of just getting guys open. Obviously, there was a lot of fun with Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor. And I still do actually have confidence in him in terms of getting these young guys to where they need to be. But in terms of the whole Lombardi versus Steichen dynamic, like Steichen wouldn't work on this team, in my opinion, just because, I mean, he doesn't, fit what Staley wants to do, right? Like, so a lot of the offensive coordinator talk is just, do you fit under this guy's general philosophy? Yes or no? And the play calling stuff is almost kind of second to that, like in terms of the philosophy and play calling. So that's just my opinion on it. I still have confidence in both Steichen and Lombardi because now I have to root for them both. But it's I didn't think that Shane Steichen has done anything amazing in these first 2 weeks that made me go, man, I really regret Joe Lombardi.
Doesn't Sirianni call plays there though?
Yeah, I mean, he does. But yeah, I mean, it is effectively both of their combined playbooks and all,
Gotcha. I will say with the Steichen versus Lombardi thing, Steichen and Lynn, for better or worse, they were there for a while and they kind of knew everybody and they sort of had their system. Granted, also the quarterback got thrown in and things changed, sure. But they were like Lombardi, they just showed up. Like they just showed up. They're still trying to get things together. Someone already pointed out in the chat, and I pointed out before, it took 2 years for the Saints to get their things together and become a dominant offense. And so it'll just take some time. And, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, and I said this last week. I feel like we've seen probably like 25% of this playbook right now, and that's going to keep growing and growing. And so right now, I saw somebody say today that all they're doing is hitch routes and checkdowns for Herbert, and could not be further than the truth. There are definitely some kinks that they have to work out, but like Tyler was just saying, like Joe Lombardi has known Justin Herbert for like 5 months. Like, let's give it some time. I want to talk about one of the other questions. A couple people pointed this out, and Edsky Munoz and Philip Wynn talking about Drew Tranquil and the way that he's been utilized. Outside of when Murray left the game yesterday, we haven't seen a whole lot of Drew Tranquil. Of course, Kaiser White had that great first game, and he's kind of taken over for Tranquil's spot. But what do you guys make of Tranquil's usage at this point? We just talked about Kenneth Murray's struggles, so what are you kind of vibing in terms of the linebacker room at this point with Drew Tranquil? Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with it is just, unfortunately, he's the third linebacker in that room, and Staley prioritizes having all these DBs and all these tackles at the first level, tackles and edges, I should say, in the first level, more so than he does like the second level, right? So like you don't really need more than Kenneth Murray and Kaiser White out there as far as linebackers are concerned. Obviously depth becomes concerning, but like that's just how this defense is going to be. Like I just don't think it's essential for Drew Tranquil to play. Now, alternate history, had Drew Tranquil not gotten hurt last year, in that first Bengals game, like maybe this would be different just in terms of what the Chargers would have seen from Drew Tranquil in a full season. I don't think he would be phased out quite as quickly, but I think they prefer Kaiser in the run game at least right now, and sort of what he does. And to me, I don't really have a strong preference between the two. Plus, Tranquil is also valuable from a special team standpoint, right? Like, and I think he provides you more there than Kaiser White would, So it stinks because, like, you know, because of that injury, like, we all thought Drew Tranquil going into 2020 particularly was going to be a breakout player, and it didn't happen. But like now there's not a whole lot of room for him to be like a breakout difference making defensive player, just because that's not what the scheme really calls for.
Yeah, it's so hard when Murray and White are dominating all the snaps and we don't see Tranquil. So I mean, I'd like to, I don't know, the run defense, again, it was the preseason, but the run defense throughout the preseason when White and Tranquil were on the field,
it was great.
It was so good. It just seemed so decisive. And while I think that unfortunately, Murray is his own guy, and the rotation is White and Tranquil. You know, Tranquil, barring an injury to Murray, is not going to go in. But I wish they would, or rotate or something. Like Murray is always going to, I would assume, to them, be that attacker to go get, but he's not going and getting. So I just kind of wish Tranquil would come in a couple of times. Maybe it's a relief thing. Maybe sometimes Murray needs a breather. I don't know. There's something instinctual lacking from Kenneth Murray in this run defense right now. But we saw it in the preseason. And again, yeah, it's the preseason, but the decisions and the mental processing by White, of course, he's been playing really well, but also from Tranquil, it was just at a different level than what Murray's at right now. And so I don't know if they need to scale him back. Maybe Murray is I don't know. I'm very much so hoping that maybe with Tillery or with Murray, and it doesn't work like this, but I wish that just because you were a first round pick, it doesn't mean they can't take you off the field for guys that are playing better. And I hope that, you know, this run defense can get better. But if we have to keep watching, you know, Tillery or Murray just struggle against the run, meanwhile, potentially better players are staying on the sideline or only getting 3 snaps a game or whatever it was. Tranquil probably going to have like 5 snaps this past game if Murray didn't get hurt. I would hate to watch them waste that talent because players in front of them are first round picks. So I hope things change. I think things could change. But for right now, it's not necessarily puzzling. It's just because Murray's his own guy. They want him for a certain role, and Tranquil and White are different roles. But I just can't help but notice that one guy's just really struggling and Tranquil looked really good. So I don't know. I don't know what happened in between the beginning of the offseason where Tranquil was going to be like the green dot starter #1 guy all the way until now where they're only giving him 4 snaps. I just feel like you need to find a way to rotate these guys a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised at the lack of rotation because, I mean, we heard all preseason that it was co-starters, that Murray, Wright, and Tranquil were all starters, and that's not really been the case. So I thought it was pretty telling. Like, right as Tranquil came in, he had a great run stop on the edge against Tony Pollard, which was a fantastic play. We've all been big fans of Tranquil's game, and I think we all kind of agree that we'd want to see him more often. Shout out to the skeptical Cowboys fan. You are officially my favorite Cowboys fan. I had some very poor experiences interacting on Twitter with Cowboys fans, but shout out to you, man. You're a good guy.
Appreciate you, man. Whatever your name is, I will follow you if you're on Twitter.
Yeah, let us know what your Twitter at is, and we'll be sure to follow you. Wow, lots of Denzel Perryman questions today after he got cooked on Monday Night Football. So love the guy. One of my favorites, emotionally, connected Chargers in recent memory. I don't know if he would fare much better. Like I think Denzel Perryman is so explosive against the run, but I think Murray is pretty close to that same kind of level. It's just kind of off right now. But definitely miss the person Denzel Perryman for sure.
I wanted to bring up this one from Christian Red, who says, "How much longer can we defend Jerry Tillery?" And I'd like to respond to that by saying, "We."
It's Julio asked that question, but yeah, I did defend Jerry Tillery today, but Alex did not.
That's my.
I do think that he did better in the second half. My only question, and I'd have to rewatch this again. Was Tillery better mostly? Did you think most of his run stops and whatever came on the final drive? I don't know.
There was definitely one. There was definitely one early in the third quarter. And then I want to say on the Cowboys' second to last drive was the other run stop.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like the first half was not good, but I did feel like he did improve in the second half, which he's got to figure out a way to be more consistent again, which is the same problem as last year. But he had 3 pressures, had a couple run stops. We want him to be more active, and he was. So if he's able to build on this and next week have a good game, then we'll kind of go from there. Philip points out Damon Square is on the Raiders. Gus Bradley has collected all the former Chargers players. At this point, I'm pretty surprised that Jaleel Adai is not on that team.
That's how he completes the Infinity Gauntlet.
It's the ship of Theseus from WandaVision. If you take out each piece of the ship, and am I still Vision, or am I the new Vision or the old Vision?
That is too funny. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for us today. Tyler, Alex, any final thoughts before we head out of here tonight?
Yeah, it was an illegal shift. Bye-bye.
Oh man, you guys, you're in things. I feel like that's one of those rules, like traveling in the NBA, where like everybody does it, and it just really shouldn't be called. Someone pointed this out earlier. Actually, there was a play where Mike Williams got targeted in the end zone, and the defensive back literally did not even turn back.
Yeah,
I think that to me was probably my least favorite call of the day. And then blowing Justin Herbert dead when he was clearly not dead probably was second there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say my piece about the refs in this final minute of the show, since I didn't get to do it, and I had whole speeches prepared for what I was gonna say on the show, and Steven said we're not talking about it, so
I had a team source quote ready, man.
Say what you guys want right here now. Yeah, spill it out.
So when it comes to the ref stuff, and what I was saying on Twitter is like, I did go a little bit far in calling it loser shit to complain about the refs. Maybe that wasn't the best thing to say after the game. But in terms of how the Chargers played this game, to me, it wasn't a clean enough game to the point where I go, man, like they did everything perfectly, and then they just got boned by this call at the end. Like everything was kind of a snowball effect until you hit the point of like halfway through the fourth quarter where things start to go wrong, right? Obviously, the sack was bullshit. The illegal shift I'm conflicted on because I feel like it was technically correct, but generally it's not called that way. Yeah. So that's a whole difficult thing. I think Daniel Popper posted a video of an illegal shift an illegal motion downfield that the Cowboys did that wasn't called. So, there's that whole debate. But to me, if you're going to give up 200 yards on the ground and you're going to have Joey Bosa get clamped, and you're going to have Justin Herbert throw 2 pretty unwise interceptions, particularly the one he threw to KZ in the end zone. I just feel like you lose a lot of ground to complain about a lot of the penalties and stuff that happened. Obviously, it did go against the Chargers later, but there were also times where the Cowboys got boned on some calls. So to me, It was sort of a bipartisan hating of the refs. Obviously, the Chargers penalties came in more important moments. So that was kind of the differentiator. But to me, this wasn't some kind of Green Bay, Seattle 2012 where the Fail Mary happens. And, that was
2012.
Dude, I felt so old looking that up. I'm like 45 and that was 2012. Yeah. And so look, refs are part of the game. Randall says in the chat, there's going to be days where the refs favor the Chargers. There's going to be days where the refs go against the Chargers. There's going to be days where it's neutral. And I think you just have to play to it. So to me, just kind of go with the wind, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and to add to that, it sucks because a lot of the penalties were at key moments, right? Like the Donald Parham touchdown, which we were celebrating, everybody in the stands was celebrating for a solid 10 seconds before all of us finally noticed that there was a flag, which it was just brutal. But watching it on tape, Jared Cook straight up tackled Leighton Vander Esch. It was such a bad hold, so bad. Yeah. And he was nowhere close to Justin Herbert. So it was bad timing on a lot of them, which makes it tough to sit there and watch. As Edsky points out, the Ode Abuji call where he was illegally downfield, that was really iffy for me. It felt like watching it. I'll confirm this when watching all 22, but watching the broadcast, it felt like somebody pushed him and he just like happened to kind of like stand back up and he was past the line, which I just feel like is not very fair. But it was bad on both sides. It's been bad around the whole league. It's worse in college football. Like at this point, you've just got to be able to overcome the bad officiating that's going on. And the Chargers were just not able to do that. Tyler, any final thoughts here?
Sorry, I keep going back to the refs now. Okay, so if you watch Daniel Popper's breakdown, what is the key? Well, other than the fact that one was called and one wasn't, what was the key difference between those two? The difference was that one was called in the second, or not called in the second quarter, and one I believe was called in the fourth quarter. And talking to someone with the team, they talked about that. Refs don't want to feel like they missed calls. So in crucial moments of football games, it feels rigged in the fourth quarter, but it happens. And in close games, they feel like if they miss a call, it could cost them a job. So I think they were looking for more things in the fourth quarter. They want to make those calls in critical situations. Whereas now the Cowboys might have done it 47 other times in the fourth quarter. I don't know. But just comparing those two, one was in the second quarter. This one was in the fourth quarter. And that did make a difference talking to this person from the team. And also, I want anybody in the comments, who else moved? There's another person that moved, and they kind of also affected things as well. There were another player that potentially wasn't set on that play as well. So there's actually more than just the two that were mentioned.
Okay, then. Alrighty. I didn't know this that either. So shout out to Tyler and the team source. I'm just going to wrap this up. I know that there's been a lot of negativity. Alex, did you have something else?
Yes, I have to respond to one thing I got on Twitter, and somebody said, and this has stuck with me for 24 hours, that Alex views the Sixers differently because he always complains about the refs, and that is true. But they did not lose the playoff series to the Hawks because of refs. It was because of Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers. So you know what? I took offense to that comment. So I just had to get that out there.
Yeah, it's a tough day for referees all around. I'm just going to wrap this up. I know that there was a lot of negativity today. I know, and yesterday was worse. There's 15 games left. The Chargers have so much left in this season to prove right or wrong, and there's so much more development that can come from this season. I know it's overreaction time on Twitter, but be patient. Remember that football season is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Football season is progressive. Teams and players continue to grow throughout the season. I still feel like everything this team wants to accomplish, they can. I still think this team can be a playoff team. They definitely have to fix some things, but the sky is not falling. The season is not over. So cheer up, everybody. I know it was a tough loss, but this team is going to be able to bounce back, and I have full confidence that they will. That's going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to the Cowboys fan donating some money, and to Jay Blue for matching him. Always love the super chat features and questions. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.